A new target has been revealed for the Minnesota Wild, as recent reports have broken down the next move the Wild are looking to make here in this year's free agency to help out after a very interesting look from Bill Guerin in this offseason. We're breaking that down, as well as more recent reports on Marco Rossi, what Elliot Friedman had to say, and some very interesting updates from Michael Russo on where the Wild currently stand in a contract talks and trade value. We're going to be breaking it all down here in this video. Before we do jump into it, though, ladies and gentlemen, we're on the road to 2K, and we're just on over 100 subscribers away from that. Your support has been absolutely incredible as of late, and we appreciate everybody watching this video right now. We have a lot of news coming, and you will not want to miss it. We still have this long-awaited contract extension for potentially Marco Rossi, definitely Kirill Kaprizov. We're going to have you updated with all of it as it comes out here on the channel. But let's jump straight into what we have here first of all. Going over this report and going over Jack Roslovic. Should Rossi struggle early on, Jack Roslovic would also give John Hynes another option down the middle. He could also help on faceoffs as the right-handed forward won 54.1% of his draws last season. Now, this comes from Justin Godfrey on Gone Puck Wild and discussing what the next move for this Minnesota Wild team could be, but also where they currently stand on the additions. And we know that the Wild were a team that were looking to make some big moves. We had Brock Besser on the table. Ultimately, I think Bill Guerin made the right decision there. If you're not confident on him, don't make that risk, especially as much as he's going to make. So going out and adding a guy, once again, like Nico Sturm, bringing him back in this lineup, getting a one-year veteran like Vladimir Tarasenko. These are moves that ultimately will work. They're waiting this one more year, get us through the playoffs, and trying to work out where they want to make these big spending go. And of course, next year's free agency class is big. We have some more important things internally. And coming into this, Jack Roslovic as well, certainly a pretty good contract projection. 3 by 4 years. Now, where we saw him last year in the playoffs was not playing too many games against Florida with Carolina. Ultimately, kind of a similar situation to Marco Rossi. However, he has proven, he's been in the league for a while, that once, given a different kind of scenario, given a different outlook of a team, we know the Hurricanes are a very deep team, he will fit into really wherever. And when we do go and kind of take a look, of course, that we're going to jump into in a minute at the lines, there are many opportunities where he could really slot in, but as we saw that article mentioned there as well a minute ago, a very big, important part of it is what's going to happen with Danila Yurov. Is he going to be a confident center? We don't know yet, and I think Jack Roslovic is the perfect kind of backup situation, and also really don't even need to be a backup kind of option if something goes wrong. He's a great option regardless, and I think that he would be someone that really fits in well with this team. And of course, as we take a look at the Minnesota Wild cap space, the $10 million there is allocated for a few players at this point. I think Marco Rossi is the big one, of course, and going back to his projections there, a $7 million deal around that area, maybe even a 6.5, but it does seem like it's going to be a 6-7 year deal around that area. We can really cancel out that two-year deal. I don't think that's going to happen at this point. But going back to Jack Roslovic's contract, even though he is at a $3 by $4 million deal, and technically the Minnesota Wild don't have enough cap if it were to be a $7 million contract, we do see Jack Roslovic as a UFA. And of course, the longer we wait, I do think the lesser that deal is going to go down, the more that deal is going to go down to a lesser price. And we've been kind of seeing the realm of a around $2.5 million deal, the possibility of it. So that's something I'm pretty excited about on that side of things. Of course, if the Wild continue to try and add these younger players and add these cheaper players, similar to what they did with Nico Sturm. Not necessarily on the younger side for him, but a cheaper side who brings some experience. And Jack Roslovic does the same, playing on a few different teams already in his career, and bringing what he does to the team is going to be a very important part of that. And as we do look at the offense here, we can kind of assume that Danila Yurov will likely be at the 3C. Behind Marco Rossi, assuming he stays with this team. If we do see Hartman at center still, I could see him moving over to the wing. Of course, Yurov would be there, and that would make a bit more sense. If Yurov doesn't work, you can move him back to the wing and put Jack Roslovic at center. There's a lot of options that would be created with Roslovic on this team, but also with already what the Wild have, what they've acquired, and what they're going to be bringing up from the AHL. So Jack Roslovic, a very interesting option here. I want to know what you guys think about this as well, because it is one that not a lot of people are talking about, and I think that a lot of people really should kind of push their way into the mindset of adding a player similar to Jack Roslovic, whether it is age, price, kind of fit in with the Wild. It all really makes sense, and as cheap as possible that Bill Guerin can get him, that's definitely a move that they would like to make. Now, this does not solve any of our problems, to a higher extent, but it really is just a kind of a placeholder for a guy like Yurov, and you can also go with what you want to do, whether it is a 3-year deal like was previously shown in the projection by AFP Analytics, whether it is a 1 to 2 year deal. I think there's a lot of options, and I think the longer that, as I mentioned, Jack Roslovic stays a UFA, I think the longer that you'll see some more contract movement, whether it is going down in price, down in term. Something like that really seems to be making quite a bit of sense here for this Minnesota Wild team. But we do need to head on now to our next topic, kind of linking in with this exact same thing. Another Marco Rossi update, this time getting a bit more interesting regarding what Michael Russo has had to say. Of course, we have stuff from him, Elliot Friedman. Everybody seems to be chipping in on what we're seeing here right now. And going over to Marco Rossi and taking a look at his trade value here. When you're taking a look at his trade value, I want to put this out there because we have Michael Russo that we're going to get into his quote in a minute, talking about the trade value. Now, this is among fantasy trade value. So keep this in mind. This is not worth, the NHL trade value, but we can kind of put this into a line because it's really hard to see what trade value someone has when you don't have a graph or nothing really like this. So putting it in comparison to fantasy centers, and of course you have some random ones that would be there, but he ranks 83rd among centers and 297th overall, which goes to show that the Minnesota Wild nearly tanked his trade value going in through these playoffs. And going back to what we saw Michael Russo say, kind of going into his quotes, we know that there's a lot of interesting stuff going on here. And he said Rossi would 100% take a high AAV deal like Martin Nietzsche's 6.5 per year, but the Wild have offered a 2-year deal at below $5 million, and Rossi doesn't want to get traded, so he doesn't want to do any of the favors by accepting an easily movable AAV. Guerin's announcement that he had matched, that he'd match any offer sheet that goes with Rossi was designed to just scare off suitors in the next breath. He said they have a pay structure, they have Rossi falling in line at if somebody called his bluff and offered Rossi $7 million plus, I'm still not confident the Wild would match. Now, going here, Michael Russo's nearly calling out Bill Guerin's bluff, kind of saying that, it is a bit of a smart thing that Bill Guerin is doing, gives him longer to negotiate, saying that, hey, we're going to sign it whatever, even if he doesn't actually have that mindset. But from what we've been seeing over the past few weeks, it does seem like the Wild and Marco Rossi and, everybody's coming closer and closer together, even though they kind of doesn't seem like they're in a cahoots really at this point. But from what we've been seeing and what we're hoping at least, it definitely seems like they're getting a bit closer. Now, Michael Russo also had this to say about Marco Rossi's trade value. I don't think the Wild helped their own cause by portraying to the league they didn't feel Rossi could function in the meat of a Stanley Cup playoff run. I guarantee you that was a red flag to the league that watched a guy like Bennett win the Conn Smythe Trophy as Florida's 2C. Now, coming back into this as well and going over where we currently stand with this, as I mentioned, it doesn't seem like the Wild are keen on trading him, and now it doesn't seem like many teams are really willing to take that gamble on a guy like Marco Rossi, who, although has a lot of potential, we still don't know what he could be like in a deep playoff run, especially the way that his build and the way that he's kind of a bit of a smaller center here. And we saw a guy like Sam Bennett be a completely different style of player and win that Conn Smythe, and how good he was in those playoffs was honestly shocking to a lot of people. Now, Marco Rossi will not lead the rumor mill, but it certainly seems perceived value around the league is lower than expected. And according to Elliot Friedman on Sportsnet's Monday's episode of 32 Thoughts, the podcast, Minnesota never received any quality offers for the 23-year-old center that was deemed adequate enough to give him up. So, as I mentioned, and kind of going back to what Michael Russo said, everything seems to be falling in place at the Minnesota Wild. Really can't get a trade done for Marco Rossi with the value that they kind of portrayed that he has, how much value he's going to be trying to make on his next contract. And going back to this whole plan that they've been going through for the last few weeks, going on what the next free agency signings hold, is a lot of opportunity and a lot of stuff that's waiting on Marco Rossi and that decision from Bill Guerin and the Minnesota Wild. For example, what would happen with Jack Roslovic? So we have a lot to cover still, ladies and gentlemen. This is kind of just the surface still. We're scratching it. We're not getting any deep information just yet, but it will be coming soon, and we're going to have it here for you guys on the channel. That's all I got in this video. If you did enjoy, give it a like, hit the sub button as well, and let me know what you think about these two topics here in the comments below. Jack Roslovic, would you think he's a good center perhaps to go behind Danila Yurov if he does not work out as a center in the NHL? Also, let me know what you think about Michael Russo's quotes here coming out about Marco Rossi and what the plan is for him going forward. But that's all I got in this video. Like I mentioned, if you did enjoy, leave it a like, hit the sub button as well. I'm signing out though. Thank you for watching. Hope you have a great day. See you later.